that Keanu Reeves sat in
It is.
when he said, if you're not going to fight for your love, what kind of love do you have?
There is something deeply unsettling about watching some of the most composed, most camera-trained, most professionally guarded people on the planet completely fall apart, not because of scandal, not because the cameras caught them off guard, but because one man simply walked into the room. Keanu Reeves. Say the name out loud. Watch what happens to the people around you. There's a pause, isn't there? A slight softening. Maybe the corner of your mouth curls up without you even telling it to. That's not accidental. That is the effect of a man who has spent decades doing something the entertainment industry almost never produces. Being genuinely, unconditionally, relentlessly real. And here's what makes this extraordinary. It's not just fans who react this way. It's the people who are supposed to be immune to charm. The ones who have been trained, styled, and media coached within an inch of their lives. Sandra Bullock, Kelly Ripa, Drew Barrymore, Winona Ryder, Diane Keaton, Ana de Armas, Jim Carrey, even Jonathan Groff, someone completely accustomed to being around the biggest stars in the world, openly called Keanu crazy hot without a single ounce of hesitation. So the real question isn't whether Keanu Reeves has an irresistible charm. The evidence is overwhelming and frankly hilarious. The question is, why? What is it about this man that strips away every layer of professional composure and leaves the most famous people alive acting like they've never seen anything like him before? Kelly Ripa and the motorcycle invitation. Nobody saw coming. Let's start with Kelly Ripa, because Kelly Ripa is not a woman who loses her composure. She is one of the sharpest, quickest, most professionally polished interviewers in the television game. She has sat across from presidents, rock stars, A-list actors, and cultural icons for decades, and she has never once been caught unprepared. She is always the one steering the room. Until Keanu Reeves showed up talking about motorcycles. The conversation started simply enough. Keanu mentioned his motorcycle company, Arch Motorcycles, a passion project he co-founded with custom bike builder Gard Hollinger. Kelly, doing what skilled hosts do, pushed back a little, playfully suggesting she'd prefer if they just built the motorcycles and didn't actually ride them. And here is where Keanu did something that no media trainer on earth could have coached him to do, because it was completely, effortlessly natural. He leaned in and he said, "Kelly, riding a motorcycle is a kind of heaven." Did you catch that? He didn't just defend the hobby. He didn't just push back with stats or safety records. He used the word heaven. And then he described it, the air, the breeze, the wind, the sights, the sounds. He painted a picture that was so vivid, so clearly drawn from actual love and experience that something in Kelly Ripa visibly shifted. She went from playfully resisting to saying, "And we want you to hear this clearly. All right, well, okay, fine. You can take me, Keanu, if you're begging." Kelly Ripa just invited herself onto a motorcycle with Keanu Reeves on live television. Let that sink in for a moment. That is not a scripted moment. That is a woman who has done this job for decades, completely abandoning her professional distance because a man described riding a motorcycle so beautifully that her entire brain went, "Yes, I want that, and I want it with him." But the Kelly Ripa story doesn't end there. Years later, she appeared on a show and casually mentioned that back in the day, she used to make out with a cardboard cutout of Keanu Reeves on a soap opera set. Multiple times. She said it with the energy of someone confessing something they've made total peace with. No embarrassment, no hedging, just the calm certainty of a woman who knows that this is entirely reasonable behavior. Here's what we want you to think about. What does it take to make someone that at ease with admitting something that would be mortifying with literally anyone else? The answer is that Keanu Reeves has become culturally synonymous with safety, with warmth, with the kind of goodness that makes people feel like honesty is not just acceptable, but welcome. Drew Barrymore, a birthday motorcycle ride and a chair that became sacred. Now we need to talk about Drew Barrymore. Because what happened between Keanu Reeves and Drew Barrymore is not just a celebrity story. It is a story about a moment so perfectly human that it has taken on a life of its own. During Keanu's appearance on The Drew Barrymore Show, he delivered a line that seemed almost too good to be true. "I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover." And before anyone could process it, Drew pushed back. She said, "No, no, because if you're a lover, you gotta be a fighter." "How so?" "Because if you don't fight for your love, what kind of love do you have?" The man quoted that back at her. From her own challenge to him in real time, he reframed it into a philosophy. That is not charm. That is something rarer. That is the ability to truly listen, to hear what someone is saying, engage with it genuinely, and offer something back that is more beautiful than what you started with. And the impact of that moment, we know how deep it went because of what happened when Australian comedian Celeste Barber appeared on the same show. She sat down in the chair across from Drew, and her very first question, her most important question, the thing she most needed to know, was whether she was sitting in the exact chair where Keanu Reeves had said those words. The audience erupted, Drew confirmed it, and Celeste Barber visibly felt something, sitting in that chair, knowing where those words had been spoken. A chair became a relic. Words became a monument. That is the Keanu Reeves effect. But the most extraordinary Keanu and Drew moment isn't even that one. It's the story Drew told about her 16th birthday. She was at a club. She was 16. And Keanu Reeves walked in. He found her, grabbed her hand, took her outside, and put her on the back of his motorcycle. And then he drove, at what Drew described as the warp speed of my life or something. She said she felt free, completely, totally free. She called it a moment she holds so dear, because as we get older, she said, it gets harder and harder to reach that feeling. Pause here, because this moment is doing something very specific, and we want you to understand what it is. Keanu Reeves didn't give Drew Barrymore a gift. He didn't give her a compliment. He gave her an experience, a physical, visceral experience of pure freedom on the night of her birthday. And 30+ years later, she is still carrying it, still describing it with the exact emotional clarity of someone who felt something real. What kind of man leaves that kind of impression? The answer is, a man who is fully present. A man who, even at a party surrounded by people, looked across the room and saw a 16-year-old girl who needed a moment she would never forget, and gave it to her. That is not charm in the conventional sense. That is attentiveness, elevated to an art form. Sandra Bullock, mutual crushes, and the most heartbreaking non-romance in Hollywood. Here's a question for you. Have you ever had feelings for someone, kept them completely to yourself, watched a perfectly good love story not happen because neither of you spoke up, and then found out years later that they felt the exact same way? Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves lived that story, publicly, on television, in front of millions of people, and somehow it became one of the most universally beloved celebrity moments in recent memory. It started on Ellen DeGeneres' show. Ellen asked Sandra which co-star was the most fun to kiss. Sandra's answer? Keanu Reeves. She didn't hedge. She didn't say it diplomatically. She said it with a certainty that suggested she had thought about this before. Ellen, doing what Ellen does, immediately clocked it, and later made sure to tell Keanu that Sandra had said this. Keanu's reaction was perfect, not performed, not calculated. He genuinely did not know. "No," he said, as if the information didn't compute. And then Ellen told him something even more devastating, that she herself had a crush on Sandra too. "Did she know?" Ellen asked. And Keanu said, "She obviously didn't know I had a crush on her either." Two people, decades of friendship, mutual crushes. Neither one said a word. Ellen, visibly floored, asked the obvious question. How did two people with obvious feelings for each other let it go unspoken for so long? And Keanu said something that is both completely heartbreaking and somehow exactly right. "We were working." And then after a pause, he added, "But I think we're probably friends for that long because we didn't." There it is. He didn't romanticize the missed connection. He didn't wallow in it. He recognized, with the kind of wisdom that only comes from someone who has done a great deal of living, that some relationships are preserved by not being pursued. That what they had, years of genuine friendship, might have been made possible by what they chose not to do. But before we move on, let's not skip what Sandra said about him in another interview, because it reveals something about Keanu that words almost can't contain. She described how handsome he was, how sweet he was, and then she said something that should make anyone smile. "It was hard for me to really be serious. He would look at me and I'd be like, And then she made a face of pure, helpless, absolutely can't help it infatuation. Sandra Bullock, Academy Award winner, one of the most beloved actresses in Hollywood history, turning into a teenager at the memory of someone looking at her. That is not charm, that is gravity. The man bends the space around him. The nicest guy in Hollywood. But is it actually true? Hey, let's address something head-on because it needs to be said. The Keanu Reeves is the nicest guy in Hollywood narrative can sound, from a distance, like a PR campaign, like something his team crafted carefully and fed to the media over many years until it became accepted wisdom. We've seen that happen before. We know how celebrity branding works. Except every single time someone tries to trace the story back to its source, they keep running into the same thing. Other people. Strangers. People with no publicist, no angle, no reason to craft a narrative. During one interview, a host confronted Keanu directly with a specific story, that he waited outside his own rap party for 20 minutes, in the rain, because there was a miscommunication about getting in, and he didn't want to make a scene. He didn't want to pull rank. He didn't want to turn a small problem into a moment about him. So he stood in the rain, for 20 minutes. Keanu's response to hearing this? He genuinely couldn't remember it happening. Think about that for a second. The moment was so unremarkable to him, so consistent with how he simply moves through the world, that it didn't even register as a memory. It wasn't a sacrifice. It wasn't a decision. It was just what he did, because it was what made sense. That is the specific detail that separates authentic character from performed niceness. Performed niceness remembers itself. Authentic character doesn't even notice. And then there is the story that Octavia Spencer told. Her car broke down in the middle of a busy intersection. Sunset Boulevard, one of the most chaotic stretches of road in Los Angeles. She was dressed in sweatpants, a worn-out college t-shirt, and she was on her way to an audition. Nobody was stopping to help. And then a motorcycle pulled up. Helmet came off. Sunglasses came off, and she heard, "Hey, do you need some help?" She didn't recognize him immediately. He wasn't dressed to be recognized. He wasn't performing helpfulness. He was just a man on a motorcycle who saw someone in trouble and stopped. He pushed her car to safety, with his own hands over her protests, because he wouldn't let her do it herself. Octavia Spencer, one of the most talented character actresses in the business, told this story with the energy of someone who still hasn't fully processed what happened. The wonder in her retelling isn't about who he was, it's about what he did. That distinction matters enormously. Katie Lowe's, knees, and the slow-motion hair moment. We need to pause here and acknowledge something that almost everyone who has encountered Keanu Reeves in person seems to describe independently of each other. It is not about his fame. It is not about his movies. It is something physical that happens to their bodies. Their knees go weak. Katie Lowe's, actress, television star, someone who has spent years working alongside some of the most attractive and famous people on the planet, described the moment Keanu walked into the restaurant where she was working at her host stand. She described a motorcycle pulling up, a helmet coming off, and then, in her own words, "It was a slow-mo hair situation. My knees start shaking. I'm having a real reaction." She wasn't starstruck by his fame. She was physically reacting to his presence before she even knew it was him. And when she did recognize him, her assessment was characteristically direct. He is like a male triangle, perfectly shaped. But here's the thing, and Katie was very clear about this, what stayed with her wasn't the physical reaction, it was what happened after. She described him as the nicest human ever. She talked about his soul. She said she had a good radar for a good guy. And Keanu Reeves, in her estimation, was the definitive proof of that radar's accuracy. This is the pattern we keep encountering. The initial reaction is physical, but the thing that people can't stop talking about, the thing that lodges itself in their memory and refuses to leave, is how he made them feel, seen, heard, valued, like they mattered to him in that moment more than anything else in the world. And here's the question we want to put to you directly. When was the last time someone made you feel that way? When was the last time you made someone else feel that way? Because Keanu Reeves seems to do this not occasionally, not when the cameras are on, not when there's something to gain, but as a matter of course, as a fundamental feature of how he moves through the world. What would it look like if we all tried to do that just a little bit more? Diane Keaton, Love That Grows and the Power of Being Chosen. Diane Keaton is many things. She is an Academy Award winner. She is a cinematic legend. She is famously, wonderfully, unapologetically herself. And when she talked about Keanu Reeves, she didn't do it with the measured restraint of someone discussing a professional colleague. She did it with the gleeful, almost conspiratorial energy of someone sharing a secret they're delighted to make public. They co-starred in a film together, and her account of the experience was this: Keanu Reeves was in the same movie, and he also loved me. He loved me a lot, not just a little tiny bit. It expanded. His love grew with time. And then, delivering the line with perfect comedic timing, "So I like him. I'll take Keanu." There is so much packed into this small exchange. There is humor, obviously, but underneath the humor is something that Diane Keaton's delivery makes absolutely clear. She means it. She liked working with him. She felt genuinely received by him. She felt seen and appreciated. And for someone of her stature and experience, that is not automatic. That is not guaranteed. That is earned. The phrase, "his love grew with time," is doing significant work here. It suggests attentiveness. It suggests that Keanu Reeves doesn't deliver a fixed, one-size-fits-all version of warmth. He actually pays attention. He responds to what's in front of him. And over time, as he understands someone better, his regard for them deepens. That is not a Hollywood performance. That is a human being choosing, again and again, to care more rather than less. In an industry that tends to reward detachment, that tends to treat vulnerability as weakness and emotional investment as liability, Keanu Reeves keeps quietly, persistently choosing the opposite. Carrie-Anne Moss, Winona Ryder, and the chemistry that never fades. One of the most interesting things about Keanu Reeves's relationships with his co-stars, they don't evaporate after the cameras stop rolling. Most professional relationships in Hollywood are contained to the project. They burn bright, they're warm and collaborative, and then they end when the credits roll. People move on. With Keanu, that's not what happens. Carrie-Anne Moss, Trinity herself, the woman who shared one of the most iconic cinematic partnerships of the 1990s and 2000s with Keanu across the Matrix franchise, still talks about him with the familiarity and affection of a lifelong friend. She described hours-long phone calls. She described the kind of connection that doesn't diminish with distance or time. She laughed at the memory of it. "You were definitely on the phone for 6 hours," with the ease of someone recalling something that remains genuinely warm. And then there's Winona Ryder. Winona described Keanu as one of her favorite people to work with and be around, and then said something that stopped the interview cold. "I knew the movie would only work with someone I have really strong chemistry with, and I've always felt like we did." He agreed. "We do." Present tense, not past. And then came the admission. Winona told him she had a big, healthy crush on him, and Keanu, with the slightly flustered energy of a man who had just been told something he genuinely didn't know but is very glad to hear, admitted that he had felt the same, that there had been feelings on both sides, that neither of them had said anything. Another entry in the Keanu Reeves archive of mutual crushes that didn't become romances, but somehow became something even better. Lasting, genuine, warm connections that survive decades intact. What does it tell us that so many of the most significant relationships in his life follow this pattern? We think it tells us something crucial. Keanu Reeves values the people in his life more than he values any particular outcome with them. He doesn't press. He doesn't push. He doesn't extract. He receives. And somehow, people love him more for it. Ana de Armas, the stunt that ended all complaining, and what it means to truly inspire. Ana de Armas appeared on a late-night show and was asked simply how Keanu Reeves was doing. Her response is worth examining carefully because it reveals something about the specific nature of his effect on the people around him. She described being in Prague for months of intense filming. She was exhausted. She was in pain. She was, by her own account, ready to complain. The way anyone who has been pushed to their physical limit for 4 months is entitled to complain. And then she described a rehearsal, a difficult stunt scene, And she watched Keanu, who was older than her, who had been doing this for longer, who had every reason to be more tired, do it without complaint. Just roll through it. Just handle it. Just keep going. "I'm done," she said, not in defeat, in admiration, in the particular kind of inspiration that only comes from watching someone embody something you aspire to, without being asked to, without performing it, without making it about being seen. This is leadership, not the corporate, memo and mission statement kind, the kind that happens when someone simply chooses to be excellent in a way that makes everyone around them want to rise to meet it. Ana de Armas, one of the most sought-after actresses in the world right now, went on that show and spent her interview time talking about how Keanu Reeves made her want to be better. That is the kind of tribute that means something. That is the kind of impact that doesn't come from fame or talent alone. It comes from character. Consistent, daily, unperformed character. Alice Eve, The Vault and the Rare Gift of Being Known. Alice Eve described working with Keanu Reeves and said something that we think is among the most revealing things anyone has ever said about him. She talked about how she eventually stopped trying to analyze him, stopped trying to figure him out, to categorize him, to understand what made him the way he was, and simply started pouring things into him, her worries, her anxieties, the things that kept her up at night. And then she described the moment she realized what he was to her. She told him something and said, "Don't tell anyone this, Keanu." And he looked at her and said, "I'm a vault," she said. And I was like, okay, now I'll tell you everything. Think about what it means to be a vault. In an industry built on currency, where information is traded, where gossip is social capital, where knowing things about people is a form of power, Keanu Reeves is a man who actively refuses to participate in that economy. He holds what people give him. He doesn't pass it on. He doesn't leverage it. He keeps it. Alice Eve described him as a keeper of secrets and said that his energy was that of a man who travels to other worlds. This is unusual, elevated language for a colleague. It's the language of someone describing an encounter with something genuinely rare. And she's not wrong. In a world full of people who talk, who share, who trade in other people's stories, a person who keeps is extraordinary. How many people in your life are vaults? How many people could you tell something real to and know, with absolute certainty, that it stays there? If you have even one person like that, you know how rare it is. Keanu Reeves seems to be that person for nearly everyone he meets. Jim Carrey, Jonathan Groff, and the charm that crosses every line. We said at the beginning that Keanu's effect isn't limited to women, and the evidence for this is just as compelling and frankly even more surprising because of how matter-of-factly it tends to be delivered. Jim Carrey, one of the greatest physical comedians and most uniquely talented performers in the history of film, said about Keanu Reeves, "You are the man that every man aspires to be." Sit with that, Jim Carrey. A man who has never in his public life appeared to lack confidence in his own singular vision of himself, looked at Keanu Reeves and said, "That is the standard. That is the measure. That is what it looks like to do it right." And when Keanu was told this, his reaction was instantly to redirect the attention back to Jim Carrey. He called him kind, generous, a creative genius. He couldn't hold the compliment because holding it felt wrong. He immediately had to give something back. That is the specific psychology of a person who is genuinely, not performatively, humble. And then there's Jonathan Groff. Appearing on a show, he described the first day of fight training for a project. And Keanu Reeves walked in wearing his jiu-jitsu outfit. And Jonathan Groff, without hesitation, without qualification, without any of the cultural hemming and hawing that tends to surround men complimenting other men's appearance, said, "Oh my God, so hot, super hot, like crazy hot." The room laughed, the host laughed, Jonathan Groff laughed, and what's notable is that nobody was surprised. Nobody was even slightly thrown by a man enthusiastically calling Keanu Reeves attractive, because of course he did. This is just the logical conclusion of being in Keanu's presence. The normal filters stop working. The usual social calculations go offline. And what comes out is simply the truth. Keanu Reeves makes people tell the truth about themselves. That might be his greatest gift. Paula Abdul, Suki Waterhouse, and the underwear story. Nobody asked for, but everyone needed. We would be doing this story a serious injustice if we didn't talk about Paula Abdul and the motorcycle underwear incident. Paula Abdul was asked directly whether the rumors were true, that she had been dating Keanu Reeves after he starred in her Rush Rush music video. Her answer was, essentially, that she desperately wished it were true, but it was not. What actually happened was that she went to his trailer to introduce herself. The door was slightly open, and she found Keanu Reeves, headphones on, completely absorbed in the music, air guitaring enthusiastically in his underwear. Her immediate thought? That's my boyfriend. She said it with absolute conviction. She said it the way someone announces a fact. And then she laughed and clarified that they did not, in fact, date. But the enthusiasm with which she reached that conclusion in that moment, seeing a man being completely, unguardedly himself, lost in music, not performing anything for anyone. Keanu Reeves is the same person whether or not he thinks anyone is watching. That is rare. That is genuinely rare. And somewhere in the human nervous system, we are exquisitely attuned to that rarity. We feel it. We respond to it. We cannot stop thinking about it. Suki Waterhouse, asked in a separate interview to choose between two actors for a role, Jason or Keanu, didn't even pause. "I'd say Keanu," she said. "He's like the best-looking 50-year-old man." And then, adding a clarification that is somehow even funnier for how specific it is, "and he's not anybody's stepdad or anything." The bar she set there is unique and personal and perfect, and then she crossed it with one choice. Keanu, kids, puppies, and the superpower. Nobody talks about enough. Here's the thing about charm that we rarely examine. It's easy to be charming to the people who matter. It's easy to be warm and generous and attentive with the powerful, the famous, the useful. That kind of charm is a calculation, and the calculation is obvious. The real test is how someone treats people from whom they have absolutely nothing to gain. And Keanu Reeves, by all available evidence, treats children and animals with the exact same quality of attention that he gives to Academy Award winners and television hosts. There is documented footage of him on the subway, alone, no entourage, no publicist, no cameras arranged in advance, offering his seat to a standing passenger, carrying someone's heavy bag, giving up his own space without announcement. There is the moment with a young fan named Noah, who told Keanu he was probably his favorite actor in the whole world. And Keanu didn't do what most famous adults do in that situation, give a warm, vaguely condescending, "Oh, thank you," and move on. He engaged. He asked about characters. He talked about Duke Kaboom from Toy Story 4, with the genuine enthusiasm of someone who is actually proud of that performance, actually delighted that a kid loved it. There are multiple accounts of him taking time to play with children on set, to be present with them in a way that is not about the photo opportunity, but about the actual child. And the animals. The moment that exists on video, where Keanu is surrounded by puppies, trying to give each of them equal attention with the focused energy of someone who has accepted this as the most important task currently available to him. Everybody get along, say hi, communicate. That moment has been watched and rewatched and shared because it is so completely unperformed that it almost doesn't look like a celebrity moment at all. It looks like a man who really, genuinely loves puppies. Because he does. And that matters. Because the people who are good to those with no power are telling you who they actually are. The real secret. And why it matters more than you think. So we come back to the question we asked at the beginning. Why does Keanu Reeves break celebrities? Why does he make composed, trained, experienced professionals forget their talking points and start telling the truth? Why does he cause knees to shake and chairs to become sacred and admission of decade-old crushes to come tumbling out on live television? We've gathered the evidence. Let's put it together. Keanu Reeves is present. Not present in the vague, aspirational mindfulness app sense of the word. Present in the specific, practical sense that when he is with you, you have his actual attention, not the performed version of it, not the careful maintenance of eye contact that someone coached him on, his actual, full, unhurried attention. Keanu Reeves is consistent. The person who stands in the rain outside his own party, rather than make a scene, is the same person who pushes a stranger's broken-down car, is the same person who gives a 16-year-old girl a motorcycle ride on her birthday, is the same person who says, "I'm a vault," and means it. There is no gap between the public and private version. That gap is where most people's charm lives. For Keanu, there is no gap to exploit. Keanu Reeves has lived through extraordinary pain. He has lost people he loved. He has experienced grief in ways that would be unimaginable to most. And rather than becoming guarded, rather than retreating into the comfortable numbness that wealth and fame make available, he has remained soft, remained open, remained the kind of person who still marvels at puppies and still gives motorcycle rides and still says, "I'm a vault," because he knows what it costs to lose something precious. Keanu Reeves does not need anything from you. This is the secret that makes everything else possible. He is not working an angle. He is not cultivating you for future use. He is not performing warmth in service of a larger goal. When he is kind to you, it is because kindness is simply what he does. And humans, who have evolved an exquisitely sensitive detector for authentic versus performed social behavior, feel this immediately, viscerally in their bodies, sometimes in their knees. The Suki Waterhouses and Paula Abduls and Jonathan Groffs and Sandra Bullocks of the world are not reacting to his fame. They're not reacting to his looks, though that clearly doesn't hurt. They are reacting to the specific, devastating rarity of encountering someone who is simply, entirely, without agenda, good. And here's the thing we want to leave you with. Here is the piece of this that is not just about Keanu Reeves. Every single person who has ever told a story about him, from Octavia Spencer with her broken-down car, to Ana de Armas with her stunt rehearsal, to the unnamed passenger on the New York subway who found a seat being offered, every one of them walked away with more than they came in with. Not because Keanu gave them something material, but because he gave them something that is increasingly hard to find. The experience of being fully received by another human being. That is what we are all hungry for. That is what goes viral, over and over, every time a new Keanu story emerges. Not because he is unique in being capable of it, but because he actually does it. Consistently, without fail, without calculation. The real question this video leaves us with is not about Keanu Reeves at all. It's about us. Who have you made feel like they mattered today? Who in your life deserves the full weight of your attention and hasn't gotten it? Who needed you to be a vault, and did you hold it? Nobody breaks celebrities like Keanu Reeves' irresistible charm. But the reason that charm works, the reason it will always work, on anyone in any room, is that it is built from the most ordinary, most available, most renewable resource in existence. Genuine care, freely given, with nothing expected in return. Go do that. If you've made it to the end of this video, drop a comment below and tell us, which Keanu moment hit you hardest? Was it the motorcycle ride on Drew's 16th birthday? The rain outside the rap party? The vault? And if you've had your own Keanu Reeves encounter, or if you know someone who embodies this same energy, we want to hear about it. Because this kind of person exists beyond Hollywood. We just forget to look. Like this video if it made you feel something. Subscribe if you want more of the stories that remind us what people are actually capable of. And share it with someone who needs a reminder today that the world still has some Keanus in it. We'll see you in the next one.